Hi, this is Tim Beckley, reporting live from beautiful Tucson, Arizona for the Conspiracy Journal, continuing with our unfair, unbalanced, unedited DVD series. And this afternoon goes to twilight. We have with us the famous Mr. Jim Dilettoso from Phoenix, who I always say very jokingly, he analyzes UFO photos. He's known for that. He's been, of course, on Coast to Coast. He's been on all sorts of TV stations, History Channel, and so forth. And I always say Jim is the man who never saw a UFO photo he didn't like. So
that's right.
Tonight I'm going to be talking to Jim.
Even the fake ones.
That's right.
I
yeah,
like them.
Yeah,
They're very good.
And he's somewhat of a controversial character in the field. And I'm going to first question I'm going to ask you, Jim, is I've known you for quite a long time. You've helped me out with my conferences down here. And how did you ever get interested in all this? I mean, professionally, you're into a lot of different things that have nothing to do with UFOs whatsoever.
Right.
And this would seem, you kind of seem like the odd man out as far as this goes.
Well, there was a logical progression.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 70s, I was in the rock and roll touring business.
Mm-hmm.
Sound and lights, trucks, guns, drugs, and girls. No, I mean sound and lights. Everything that went along with the touring business, including measurement and testing equipment in coliseums. And you don't tour in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Very simply, you don't tour in the winter. You park the trucks. We find other things to do with the equipment. And Socrates Ballas, a producer working on the Shroud of Turin movie, contracted me to develop an interface in between the iridium testing, test equipment, and his film camera. So I worked on that project for about 3 months. It was the Shroud of Turin project narrated by Richard Burton. It was one of the better known films. And during that process, we met people who were also from Brooks Institute of Photography, Rand Molnar, Dean of Faculty, who I know to this day still, and people from the Air Force Academy that were all working on it, and another film guy named John Stefanelli. Stefanelli, involved in that project, introduced me to Jim Lorenzen at APRO and said, well, you've developed a scientific interface for the Shroud of Turin, a mysterious project. How about examining UFO pictures? So I said I would, but it would take more than a year for me to go to trade shows, analyze the equipment, the software, the people, the processes involved in that before I could start the first test. And I spent all of a year with Wendell Stevens. We went to trade shows like the Society of Photo-Optical Instrumentation Engineers, the big group.
Well, now, just let me interrupt you just a second. Did you think this was a crazy idea? I mean, had you ever had a UFO sighting, or
no?
Did you just say, well, it's something different?
Yeah, it was something different. It was interesting. It was like the Blues Brothers. I've been selected to be on a mission, and I thought it was interesting. At the time, we were working on the Moody Blues long distance Voyager tour. So
and weren't you also working with Electric Light Orchestra?
Yeah,
and they had a saucer. They had
a
UFO as part of their
right. But that was props for us. Yeah. I also built the UFO for the US Festival and the closing of the 1984 Olympics that came out at the end.
Maybe we might say this was kind of implanted in you before this lifetime?
Could be, I don't know. I don't know. But I had equipment, and we knew a lot about different kinds of equipment, and I established a process by matching the right hardware and software with experts at Jet Propulsion Laboratory and Navy Lab and TRW, and developed a repeatable process based on taking photographs of little cars and regular cars, little airplanes, big airplanes, little UFOs, and then unknowns. So we had a database of knowns, like a fingerprint database.
Yeah. So this was with APRO. You were
this was with APRO, right? With APRO and Alan Benz and Jim and Cora Lorenzen and Rick Gerdes, and who was head of optical electronics industries, was on their board. Did due diligence on my process, and we tested their first 40 pictures in '79 And then
What could you tell from testing those first group? How many pictures were there?
40.
And how could you tell the real unknowns from the hubcaps?
Well,
did you do a bit of separation before?
Yeah. We did tests with, as I said, small cars and large cars and compared to properties. Model airplanes, big airplanes at different distances and different optics. Went to Wally Gentleman at Film Effects of Hollywood Company. Linwood Dunn was his partner. They did King Kong all the way through 2001. Formidable special effects people to get their opinion on different things, like the edges of a small object at a given distance are different than the edges of a large object at another distance.
This what we were discussing earlier might have play in the Phoenix lights or your analysis.
Well, analyzing lights though is different than analyzing structured objects.
Mm-hmm.
You have to use different software and different kinds
how many
data.
UFOs? Okay, you have, to me anyway, you have maybe 3 distinct types of UFOs. You've got the lights in the sky variety. There's certainly a lot of them. You see those on YouTube
Yes.
every day. I mean, to me, they're just air balloons and, Chinese lanterns, maybe or maybe not. But it's hard to tell because you've got nothing but the black sky to go against it. Then you have objects of some variety, quite a few that show maybe this shaped object or some kind of structured craft, or maybe a model, perhaps. Then you have the real close-up jobbies like the Billy Meier and the George Adamskis, which seem a little bit out of control compared to the other 2 groups that we've just gone through.
But in all of those, the properties of film, camera, and optics are still the same. So depending on depth of field, and depending on the optics of the camera, and how large and small an object is, you can extract certain things. For example, a painter. Scott wants to have in a painting, the moon at 250,000 miles away is that big. And the painter wants to put a baseball in the same painting, and at arm's length, the baseball and the moon are the same. A skilled painter will be able to have someone look at the painting and say, that's a large object a long way off, and that's a small object up close. How do they do that? The edges, the property of the edges are different as an object is large and small, closer and further away.
Now, in addition to that being on the optics, would a person seeing the object?
Your brain-eye coordination knows that, particularly in stereo vision. So when you have 2 pictures, you can tell a lot. Also, back to a painter. If a painter is going to paint the moon and paint a baseball as a paint-by-number kit, paint-by-number kit,
yeah, surely.
The moon is going to have more segments in it, more lines. The baseball is going to have a smaller number of segments, shades of gray. So you analyze the objects, look at the properties of their edges. Disney painters, objects far, pieces of glass, far, not quite as far, close, closest. The properties of the edges are different, the way that they paint them. So to be able to trick the eye into believing things. So those are data extraction processes to extract that information out and say, what's big and far away, what's small. The cruise missile, optics on it, back in that era, that was the state of the art of software that Raytheon, working on those missile systems, we went to experts in that area, of how quickly does the cruise missile say, that's a large object way over there, and this one's coming up on us, move the missile. So the color contour of a large object has more, when you segment it, reverse it, and go backwards, convert it backwards into a paint-by-number kit. Large object has more segments in it, small object has fewer. Now, the sun, shining on a large object, if you've got a large object with these lines of longitude and latitude, how many sections does the sun reflect? What percentage of the surface does it highlight? Whereas small object, the sun will light up the whole top. On a large object, the sun will make a little glint. Now those are extremes, but we have the edges, properties of edges. So if we have a picture with trees way off, mountaintops, fence posts, we extract the edges of everything and create what's called focus field indexing, edge indexing. So if we know that this is a pole, we know how big it is and how far away it is. We look at its edges. We compare it to a tree, to things known, and we build a spreadsheet of things that are this big and this far away. Now we look at the edges of the unknown. If it's 3.2 edges wide, it's the same distance away as anything else. That's 3.2. When we say edges, we mean from the point that everything in real life is in perfect focus. But the lenses make things blur out. And it may go from the solid object out here to the sky, may take 2 pixels, 5, 10, that's indexing. Let's jump to other things about film. We would look at film grain. And if 2 pictures are superimposed, we have the properties under extreme examination of both layers of film grain, except out in the sprocket areas. You know, the area where the holes are.
Have you ever analyzed the film and found that? I mean, to be the case, you can look
absolutely.
At a UFO.
Yeah, that we find.
Can you name names?
Picture 16, picture 23 of the APRO series.
Okay.
Right, where now even the first time that it's superimposed, you'll get the film grain. But then if it's still in film, a copy of a copy of a copy will have 6 layers of film grain, where out in between the sprocket holes, where there's no image, you know what I mean, where the sprocket holes are, look at the film in between the sprocket holes. See what the film grain is like there. So if there's a difference between the film grain in the image area and the film grain in between the sprocket holes, that's an indicator that it's been superimposed. And large objects and small objects, and a database of airplanes and Hale-Bopp and the moon, like a database of fingerprints. And as the years went on, we got involved from the rock and roll business into the video business, and lots of videos on MTV and satellite up and down links and image processing. We had a business for 10 years. We rented time on image processing computers, inevitably supercomputer centers that we sold time to people doing image processing. So we not only knew the finest people doing it and had access to it, we had the finest equipment. So when naysayers would say, well, you didn't do this right, you didn't do that right, you know, that's hard to swallow.
You feel like getting up and putting a fist in a TV set, their TV set.
There's one of my favorite expressions, though, related to that is, never try to teach a pig how to sing. Waste your time and annoys the pig. You know, so when you have people coming at you that don't know anything about it, they're just being naysayers. I've never had one person from NASA, TRW, film companies, courts where I testify in murder cases, question my credibility or techniques. Only in the UFO community. Only.
Right.
And
well, let's get back to the 40 photographs.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. What,
that was the APRO 40, 1979.
Okay.
1979.
And what did you make any conclusion out of that? I mean, did there seem to be more real photos than fake photos, or was it 50-50, or were there photos that they thought were genuine that you said and vice versa?
It's like boot camp.
Yeah.
It's like spring training. You throw everything that you have at it, play your first season, and you improve the following year and the following year. That year, we got used to how to talk amongst ourselves. When I say, someone says shinier, what do they mean? Convert that to mathematics for me, please. We developed a better rapport with people that manufactured hardware and software, and we got much better at rapidly going through all the steps and comparing it to our database.
How many photographs were you at, let's say over a period of the next 5 years, how many UFO pictures did you look at?
Well, hundreds. It's become thousands.
Yes.
But it would be hundreds, and you know, it takes a long time to thoroughly analyze a picture. It's like a blood lab. You can't just hold it up to the light and go, well, it looks okay to me. You know, well, what kind of disease do you have?
Now, did you ever see anything that you went back and changed your mind on later?
Yes. As the processes became more refined, I think we would get more exact in how large and how far away an object is. I don't think we ever got, maybe once or twice only, stumped where we couldn't find any evidence of a hoax, which is the way I put it. We get a match to the sun, the moon, the stars, and airplane. We get a match.
Were most of these daylight or nighttime?
They vary. They always vary. Or we get a match to something. We find evidence of a hoax, or it's an unknown. So when we would say initially, we don't get a match in our database of knowns, and we find no evidence of a hoax, that means it's an unknown. Doesn't mean it's an alien spacecraft. We don't say that. We say what it isn't, because we didn't get a match in the database. And then we can say some things about how large or how far away it is. And if we did accident recreation, this is in the, our normal business, car wrecks and airplane wrecks and accident simulations where the extraction of data out of a picture, photogrammetrics, photo numbers, mapped into a simulation. We got really, really good at that by the early 90s. I mean, we were recognized all over the country for the quality of our work in that, as we, or I in particular, had become summarily discredited in the UFO field by people that now are discredited as being liars. But no one goes back and says, oh, we're really sorry that we believed them instead of all of the science that you had done. But you just, you have to accept that. If you're going to do it, you have to accept that that's going to happen. Say, well...
Well, now, were there any photos that particularly impressed you the most, and you looked at them and say, this is just not a light in the sky, this looks like it could be something? You say it doesn't prove it's alien, but I mean,
right.
If we see a ship and it's not an airplane or it's not a blimp, and it's this shaped and it's got portholes and landing gear on it, what is it?
Right. For example, the 4 images of the Billy Meier early sightings. We spent a lot of time in a lot of different labs, including Michael Malin.
Yeah.
Michael Malin, who fights with Richard Hoagland, analyzed the Billy Meier pictures in about 1978 or 9. He's still at Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Hadn't even gotten on the Mars project, hadn't even thought about it yet, but was an image processing expert. Found no evidence of a hoax, as did Lawrence Lepley and others at Jet Propulsion Laboratory, where we could find no evidence of a hoax and evidence that was a large object, while some UFO groups were going out to discredit the case. Not our job to discredit the discreditors.
Right, and not also, I guess, your job to say whether the explanation for the photographs or what he says about the circumstances they were taking on there has really nothing to bearing. I mean, his fact that he might met beings from outer space really don't have that much bearing on the pictures.
That's correct.
So there are some people who, I remember of course the first photos at Wendell, I was impressed by it, but then once I heard the story that went along with it, the interest kind of waned, because I said, well, this guy's trying to make himself into a cult an icon.
Well, I have noticed over the decades that people who witness these kind of things, personalities change, and their memory either sharpens or exaggerates.
Yes. Yeah.
And it happens every time. And the confusing thing for me sometimes is, who's out there making the discrediting happen? Is it mean-spirited people in the UFO community, or is there you know, a 3-digit agency out there whose job it is to hypnotize people from afar to have them go discredit. It's very complicated.
Don't you also think, though, on the other hand, it is the job of UFO researchers to tackle the question of what these things are, and you can't go say I believe everything. I mean, I consider myself part of the excluded middle.
Yeah.
I mean, I can look at a story like Billy Meier and say, well, heck, these photos could possibly be legitimate. I know for a fact that some of them are not. Some of the motion picture footage, they show one where it changes color, and the Japanese narrator says, well, this is proof that he went through some time. No, he didn't color code the film. In a movie, they match all the colors up. You send it to the lab, and they match it to whatever. It wasn't done. You can tell it's a hoax. It's missing. It didn't slip through time and space. Somebody cut a couple of frames out.
Right. And any one case being true doesn't bring an understanding to who they are and why they come here. Even abductees, you know.
Right.
Although I would rather talk to 1,000 abductees than the guy that talked to the guy that saw the report.
Yeah.
Or the guy that talked to the guy that saw the alien bodies. I'd rather talk to 1,000 abductees, of which 800 are mistaken, and 100 are lying, and 50 are crazy, etc. It only takes one.
That's right.
One that it actually happened to understand a whole lot about who they are and why they're here.
Well, okay, now you've probably been involved in looking at more photos than anybody else that I know of, and you've also been on the UFO scene. I mean, nobody denies that. You're part, you know, for a long time you're part of the Phoenix Rat Pack.
Yeah, the Rat Pack.
Yeah. You even had your own band that you were a member of, right? So, I mean, obviously you have some personal opinion on this. What, after looking at all these, okay, 2 questions. After looking at these photos, what is your opinion of that? And after looking at the phenomena, what is your opinion of that? Does it differ, the two of them?
Well, I had to count the number of people here so that I don't tip my hand on what I'm going to talk about in that room tonight. All right, I'll jump ahead. In the 90s, I got a human resources personality profiling software program. The purpose of the program was, I'm going to answer 300 questions about myself. 5 degrees of strongly agree to strongly disagree. I'd rather paint a house than watch a cat. I'd rather lead a group than follow. I like blue shoes versus green hair. Whatever. And then you're going to take the same test and analyze me. I'm going to analyze me, you're going to analyze me. I decided to have Robin Quayle, Jim Harder, use that questionnaire concerning extraterrestrials, information that they had gathered from hypnotic regression of people that said that they'd been abducted. I wanted to just see what the personality profile was on extraterrestrials, if applied to the same thing. Found out 2 really interesting things. The extraterrestrials always talk to the humans by telepathy. I'll get back to what that means in a moment. And that the extraterrestrials never harm the humans, other than kidnapping them, which is against the law. If we did it, I'd go to jail for life. If they're talking by telepathy, it means that they all know what each other's thinking. Means no one alien has free will to lie, get caught, fix their personality, improve themselves, and become a better alien. Grow spiritually.
Right.
Humans can do that in one lifetime. You can go from being a pimp to, not to being a pimp's all that bad. A pimp to an avatar in one lifetime.
You got to make a living somehow.
That's right.
That's right.
You go from being a criminal to a saint in one lifetime because of having free will. So I thought about that for years and years and years and years until it dawned on me that they're coming here studying our free will and our human potential. What if we are potentially the most advanced species ever and we have messed up? Picked greed, avarice, lying, cheating, nuclear weapons, etc. instead, and there's one group that guards us. They come in from all over the universe to see what happens when you have free will run amok. And they come and check out the poor little humans, Some of them have to interface with military and all, to where
it's a rough job, but somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it. You know, aliens that look like us.
Yes.
Stop the visitors and say, okay, you get Peru for 5 days. Here's the rule. You got to knock them out. You got to put them back where they came from. Don't change their destiny. And they're trying to probe them and see if is it in the blood? Is it in the brain? Where is it that this free will happens? In the end, the extraterrestrials have some situation going on different than, higher than, or not a danger to our government. And our government says, just leave them alone. And the punchline is, there is no government cover-up. If the aliens didn't want there to be a cover-up, there wouldn't be one.
Yes, absolutely.
And they're the ones hiding. They behave like a stealth invading army.
That's right.
They're staying out of the way. If our government disclosed that extraterrestrials come here, they'd be a no-show.
Yeah.
We'd have it on the podium. Worldwide governments say, yes, they come here, and then 2 years go by, 5 years go by, 10 years go by, 20 years go by, they're a no-show.
Just like these contactees predict there's always going to be a landing or something.
Right.
Yeah. Whenever you predict it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. So, out of all of the testing of photographs, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, it wasn't to get evidence. It was so that people that take photographs or are witnesses can feel like, my service is, so that they can feel like they can come out and no one's going to make fun of them. It's not so I get more information about what kind of craft and track them all over or whatever, because it'd be like going up on the roof of a skyscraper with cameras taking photographs of thousands of cars coming and going to work, and then analyzing, this is a Buick, this is a Ford, and then what? We don't know anything about the people driving them, where they're coming from, where they're going. That's what happens in analyzing hundreds and hundreds of UFO pictures. We don't know anything about the people driving them.
Does analyzing all those pictures tell you something about the craft? Is there any similarity that you can point out? I mean, we know that they're different shapes and sizes.
I have found some ratios. Ratios of width to height, like in cigar craft.
Yeah.
It's a 13. Think of it as the unlucky 13. The ratio of the length to the height is between 12 and 14. And that the taper happens in the last 13%. And that there's a ratio with the height in cigar craft that I thought it was very interesting. I find some ratios in disc-shaped craft that I put more of that together when I analyze disc craft and flying Vs. Like, you know, if they come here from another dimension, another planet, they still have to go by the rules of our atmosphere. You know, what makes an airplane fly?
All right, well, let me ask you this. On some of the Billy Meier, you said some of the first series you believe, but later on he's got these things that look like Christmas tree bulbs on top of the craft, like the wedding cake or something like that. Well, now that thing isn't likely to fly even across the room.
Well, there's a paradox in that. Some of those photographs, particularly the ones that are up close, the properties of the edges of the craft here and the properties of the edges of the craft there are different, like it's a large object. Where some of them, where it looks like a bunch of Christmas tree balls all tight, is a small object, but it's not the whole flying machine. It's like the top came off.
It could be, but could it also be resting on the hood of a car? Or?
Could be that. The point is that it doesn't have the rest of the flying machine on it that was in the other pictures. It's about 3 feet, all the balls.
Yeah.
Well, on the large object that's over 20 feet, all the balls are about 3 feet. But it's like it flew off and went off on its own. Wendell and I went to in Connecticut, and we met this guy named Robin Shellman. And he analyzed these sounds and didn't know what they were supposed to be, and did a recreation of what it would take as an analog device to make that sound, and he drew a bunch of orbiting balls. And it's in the Billy Meier documentary from the late 70s. All in all, I think that the extraterrestrials really come here, and that there's not going to be a disclosure, and even if there was, then what? We have to get back to the business of, oh yeah, we got our human lives on a day-to-day, why don't we be better to each other? So if we just be creative, have fun, enjoy what's going on, instead of saying, as soon as disclosure happens, we're going to take over the government and we'll show you how this planet should be run. I don't think so. What's going to happen after disclosure? We'll talk about that tonight too, some. But I think let's just pretend that everyone knows extraterrestrials come here, and then get to the business of humans and how we deal with each other.
So have you had an experience yourself, sighting or contact or?
I had 2 sightings. Well, the 2 of them were 10 years apart. Maybe 5 years apart. One was with Wendell Stevens, and one was with Michael Tanner, and it was in Tonopah, Arizona, about 40 miles west of Phoenix on the way to Los Angeles. And one was a giant cigar-shaped craft, saw it for about 20 minutes, thought it was the end of the world, and I thought everybody on the planet must be seeing this right now. It was so large and bright. That was in 1979.
It's about 7 minutes until the sun goes.
Ah,
Just about 1979, and in about 1980.
that's our director, Beeble.
Great. And in about 1983, Wendell Stevens and I were driving back to Phoenix before dawn, and looking at the gas, calculating when is it going to be dawn, when are we going to get to the gas station, how far do we have to go. We're talking about that, all going on. All of a sudden, when I fall asleep, is apparently Wendell had fallen asleep and driven off the road, and you know how the car's shaking and you wake up, and maybe we should sleep. So we slept, I don't know, 15 minutes, half an hour, and where we were when we woke up was about 50 miles from where we had been the other direction. And you know, the way Wendell goes, isn't that weird? So we went, yeah, isn't that weird? And that was it. We woke up, we went on driving, we must have been mistaken. Oh yeah. And as we were driving, we were coming in, we saw these huge bright lights over to the right, we thought it was the power plant. About 6 months later, Wendell says, oh, that film that we shoot in California, here, why don't you get all the film processed? Including he had clicked off the rest of the film that was on the camera on the seat of his car. Pictures in San Diego, pictures in Tucson, and one picture in the middle that I don't remember taking, and Wendell doesn't remember taking, is out of the windshield of his car from the inside with this thing right up about 8-10 feet away from the car that looked like a black flying turtle with little white dots on it. So I put all those together and go, yeah, something weird happened at the same place as we had the other cigar-shaped sighting. So I don't know exactly what that was, but it was an unusual experience. Other than that, I haven't seen any disc-shaped craft or flying machine.
Well, but you were involved down here in the investigation of the Phoenix lights.
Right.
What time? The first report was what, around 7:30?
7:30, Paulden, Arizona.
And what happened at that point?
A guy that works at the little private airport up there called Peter Davenport to say there's a V formation of lights flying directly overhead.
Not one object.
He said a formation of lights.
Of
to
lights.
Peter Davenport.
Yes, okay.
And Peter took many, many reports that night, starting with that as the first one. At about 8:30, witnesses all over Phoenix were seeing it. 9:30, Tucson, Arizona. Turn around and go back. Casa Grande, Arizona. South Mountain, Arizona. Luke Air Force Base, and gone out of the state at 10 o'clock. So 7:30 to 10:30. 7:30 to 10:30.
Ed, by the way, if that starts to get really dark, I think there is a light thing on the back there. And
Okay,
also,
well,
too,
you guys
have-
are okay. I was worried when the light came
we
down.
also have-
If
we
you'd
have-
go
also
away,
have-
and
we
so
also
far
have
it's so good.
Night vision.
Night
on it.
vision,
Yeah, that would be
great.
good to just continue this so you see all the objects in the sky.
Yeah, when they all line up out there, I'll swing the camera over.
Right.
Shooting beams of light missing us.
It's just going to get
Yeah.
too cold and you're going to have to do it inside.
I think, what do we have on the time-wise?
Well, I think you're about 3/4 of the way through this
All
tape.
right, well, that's
Why don't you
everybody
stop
finish
it,
on-
and then you can finish up inside.
Well, if you want to.
Okay.
After his
Continue on
talk.
here.
Do it after his
I'm
talk.
all right,
He's-
let's just
He's
continue
going to
on
be
here.
here. He's going to be here all evening.
This is fun right here. Let's just finish
Okay.
because this is our unedited version.
Yeah, right.
What you hear is what you get here.
Yeah.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
free with a book. It's not $20. Okay, so the first report came in of lights in the sky.
Lights in the sky, V formation of lights. People saw 3 lights, 5 lights, 7 lights, 9 lights. Generally a leading light and then wings. Some people said a boomerang, some said a chevron, some said it was structured because they couldn't see the stars anymore as it flew overhead. Lots of people said that they saw formation of airplanes. Lots of people said it had to be flares because the Air Force said that the
Well, but
Maryland National Guard
that was
in.
later
That
on.
was later, but it was
Yeah.
the whole event, 7:30 to 10:30.
Mhm.
And
But some of the reports that came in, people said that they saw this over their driveways, over their houses, and it blacked out the entire sky.
right, blacked out the sky. Well, was translucent. They could partially see the sky through it. Like looking through a swimming pool of water.
Well, does that give us a clue as to the makeup of the object? Because it doesn't sound like a craft that's flying here from some of the
Area 51.
well, I don't know.
Or-
some people talk about projections in the sky. Could
Yeah.
some of these things be projections? Can you tell that from analyzing
Yeah,
it?
I've talked to people at Spectrophysics Company, big laser contractor, about what it would take to create a hologram that large.
And to continue moving, not just...
and to
yeah.
continue moving, and the energy supply required to make a hologram that big, and a hologram that you can see from multiple angles and be bright. Even John Alexander, and I talked about that quite at length, what it would take to do that.
Is it impossible?
No, it's not impossible. It's very complex. And
Well, then it could be some sort of, in that case, some sort of military experiment to see if this could, what reaction people
Yeah.
would have. Yeah, I mean, that's what one...
hey, if that's our military doing that, yay for our side,
Yeah.
that we can do that. Here I am being a warmonger, just like that. Like I'm talking
Yeah.
about the aliens. Feel
Yeah.
so sorry for us humans.
yeah, yeah.
I played with G.I. Joe when I was little.
Well, I mean, I think we're safe. You got to kind of like divide these things up because they're obviously not all one and the same.
Right.
And that's where people, I think, get stuck in this, is that all UFOs have to be friendly visitors. All UFOs are here to probe
Right.
and some visitors are here to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion is that they're here and they're probably, like you said, trying to hide. Maybe
Yeah.
they're not even from some other planet. Maybe they're right from some here, some
Yeah.
a separate race that grew up alongside of us and feels that they
Yeah.
they didn't
That
have the
could
same.
be. I like
yeah,
that. Underground
yeah.
bases,
Underground,
been living here
underwater,
since the
certainly,
Egyptians. Yeah, all
Yeah.
that. Yeah, could be. Anything is possible.
Mhm.
Michio Kaku has
Yes.
our millions of parallel universe theory. Glad to see
Yes.
him as the new Carl
That's,
Sagan.
yes, absolutely.
He's got a little
yeah,
panache to him.
Yeah, there you go, yeah. So now, you actually gathered how many reports, sighting reports?
About 700.
Mm-hmm.
We
Altogether
our group
1,200
did.
though.
Altogether, there are about
That had
12
names.
that have names, right. That includes City Councilwoman Frances Barwood, Peter Davenport, MUFON, and Village Labs. Almost 1,200 reports.
Okay, and were all the objects that were seen the same?
No, the objects were described differently, but we did a 3D simulation using 3D Studio Max and Meier, known as Alias and Wavefront at the time, and we created a topographical 3D model with different timeline and from different angles. And you know, if you look at a ruler on its side, it's a line. If you flip it up, it looks like a bar, and if you turn it this way, it looks like a little tiny line. Well, the same thing with this craft. There are ways to bend it and move it, looking at it from different angles.
What's the closest that it came?
A group of people, about 10 witnesses, saw it around 8:30 in the Sunny Slope area of Phoenix, which is north central Phoenix, at about 800 yards, 2,500 feet. And that estimate is given because from where they were, the two mountain passes, the mountains that create a pass that they could look at, that they saw it go through the pass slightly under the top of the two. The difference in elevation about 2,500 feet.
Okay, was it always noiseless?
Always noiseless.
Always
Not
noiseless.
one witness said that it made a sound at all, not even a whooshing.
Any other characteristics about the lights or the object that stand out?
The
You
lights
said
came,
some people actually saw what looked to be ports or windows with people inside?
yeah, a few people said that it looked like
Vacation holiday, cruise
a
ship.
tour bus, yeah, cruise ship. Little windows, little people
Yeah.
looking, little faces looking out the
Taking
window.
people taking pictures.
Right. No one said they were abducted.
Yeah.
No one said they were afraid.
How
The
about
question you asked before.
any blackouts, any poor reception on the TV?
No,
No.
no. No blackouts, no thunderstorms, no rays of light from the sky.
See, I'm trying to like parallel this between the sighting in the Hudson Valley, where they had as many as I don't know, 8,000 or 10,000 witnesses. Some people did, I believe, Phil Brodnio had this in his book where he did have some sort of telepathic contact or thought they heard some kind of, but there was no overall universal message. And how long did it take for the object to pass by?
People described it as flying very slow, like a blimp.
Okay, but now the reports, the last reports of the actual objects that are identified by the military as flares. What time did they go off, or what time did people?
Well, here's the controversy. The day after the sighting, March 13th, local reporters contacted Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson. The public information officer of both Air Force bases said, "We had no planes up, we don't know anything about it." For months, from March to May, military denied knowing anything. Well, if they had launched flares, why didn't they just say it the next day? In May, the Maryland National Guard finally, I guess, saw something on the news, and a spokesperson called up and told the Arizona National Guard spokesman, Eileen Benz, that, oh yeah, we had been there that night, and we had dropped flares at the Berry Goldwater Range. Well, there was no record of it at Davis-Monthan, but another call by Bill Hamilton to the public information officer at Davis-Monthan, response was, oh yes, the Maryland National Guard was here dropping flares, but they were back, and they were back on the ground at 8:30. First, we don't know about anything. Second, yeah, we do know it was the Maryland National Guard. They were on the ground at 8:30.
So that means they could not have been responsible for that.
Right, particularly since the record logbooks now show that they had landed at 8:30. About a month later, after USA Today does a story and more news about it, the all-new revised Public Information Officer story was, yeah, the Maryland National Guard was here and they dropped flares at about 10 o'clock and then landed.
Does anybody have copies of the original logbook that shows 8:30?
There was an attempt to get that, and it's been rejected.
Okay,
yeah, right. But the news reporters that made the inquiry still have their notes, but their newscasts aired. Both Air Force bases say
okay,
no
now,
flares, no
I
planes.
remember seeing you on, was it Sightings or one of these shows where you actually were analyzing these particular objects that seem to go
Yes.
down and disappear or something. What was your conclusion at that time, and has that changed?
Well, the lights, if you try to superimpose lights from one frame position to another, you've got to have the camera in exactly the same position, in the same azimuth, you know, what degree angle looking up and down to match it up. When we first did the tests in the 90s, video frame grabbers didn't exist. It was one frame at a time. We had to use our animation equipment and grab one frame at a time, try to superimpose it, analyze it, figure is it behind the mountain, is it in front of the mountain, and it was so close to the ridge line that we didn't try to do it by superimposing anymore. We analyzed the red, green, and blue properties of the lights compared to flares and street lights and held up. It's called a histogram, sometimes called a color histogram or color spectrum analysis, what different intensities of red, green, and blue make up this light versus that light, and the other properties of, does it change in pixels, is it like a flare, like a candle flickers, where a light stays on the same if you look at the graph. And our conclusion after studying 4 different sets of witness videotapes, comparing it to flares, we got a flares expert, Chuck Byers, who is a renowned flares purchasing agent for government agencies. His personal opinion looking at it was they're not flares, but we wanted data. We wanted manufacturers, graphs, numbers, data, and then go and shoot flares to compare them. When we did color spectrum analysis, histograms, all that combined is called a sigma. The sigma of this light, unknown, versus the sigma of a flare are very different. And we could find no instance of even a few frames in a row where they behaved like flares. Are they in front of the mountain, behind the mountain? Doesn't prove anything. If they were in front of the mountain, it would prove that they're not flares. But if they are above the mountain or beyond the mountain, it doesn't prove that they're flares, because the flares are generally the same direction, but the unknowns are that away.
Now,
and
has
the flares
anybody
are
shown
that
it
away.
Okay, to anybody who actually, the pilots and all who drop flares, have they had an opportunity to see it? They must have. I mean, it's been on TV a million times.
Only one pilot has come forward and talked about it, and that's a Lieutenant Tanaka. And he is with the Maryland National Guard, and he's the spokesman, but he was not in Arizona that night. I talked to Larry Lowe, a pilot, an investigator, just last week about the real investigation is to go investigate the alibi. Let's go find the Maryland National Guard people. Let's talk to them. More to the air traffic controllers, more to the public information officers, instead of all of us power rookies beating each other up. Go talk to the Maryland National Guard.
Do you
Stop
think that
them at the supermarket in New Jersey.
Do you think that we could, if there is a possible explanation, do you think there's still time that we could come up with it? And what would it be? I mean, that's
what would it be, and what would it
be?
prove, and what's going to happen to us? You know, a lot of good witnesses and
And
investigators
in fact,
die young.
that's kind of, well, we've reached beyond that point, you and
Yeah.
I. So they blame it on rock and
Right,
roll.
they're leaving
anyway,
us
yeah.
alone. What if they that run the
Yeah.
planet think you and I will be useful to
Well,
them later?
You know, but
and
this
they're
is what
saving us.
This is what I've always thought. Yes, that's my ace in the hole.
Right,
That's
that
yeah,
will
yeah,
be
maybe
spokesman
that's right,
for
yeah.
the trilateral
Notice I'm
commission.
dressing better.
That's
and,
what,
that's right,
I do. I like the jacket.
Would you say then that's the most, well, first of all, even analyzing these photos, that it's come to a point, we know that there have been thousands of photos. Some of them are
Yeah.
legitimate, some of them have been fake and hoaxed, and some of them are just misrepresentations
Yes.
of something. Some of them, what percent would you say seem to be of something that you can't identify? But then that doesn't mean anything either, because you're probably missing a lot of photos that you haven't seen either, yeah. And that's what's kind of muddies the waters here, is because you have so many sightings, and they'll log them in, like, you know, Peter Davenport, he does, I mean, he's the first to admit, he doesn't discriminate. Somebody calls up a report, and that's the report. What column do you put it in? Who really decides?
Yes.
You know, I mean,
They decide. You see the people that are right on the other side of that lens right there that are
Yes.
watching us on
that's
video?
right, you're right, it's up
They
to them to
decide.
decide.
They're
Well,
going to
I-
listen to us talk.
I hear them calling now,
Okay,
so
very
I
good.
think with that,
Great to see you,
Jim
John.
Dilettoso,